Hello everybody and welcome to episode 19 of the Spawn Point podcast. Joining me as always is Andy Webb on the right hand side.
Hiya, how's it going?
And we also have the return of Steve Barnett after a 2-week absence. Steve, how does it feel to be back?
Yeah, I've been really busy, but I am back, and it feels good to be back.
And we also, you probably noticed on the bottom right hand side, we also have Jean-Claude Van Damme, who's not really here, but we have his essence joining us and his little dog.
Essence.
I hope it's his dog.
We hope it's not his essence in his dog.
Yeah, that would be bad. But for this episode, we are going to be talking about are console wars a good thing? We're also going to be talking basically about the positives of it, the negatives, why it exists, and everything in between. Of course, the Spawn Point is sponsored by Virtual Gladiators, which is a Minecraft server hosting company, and you can get 10% off using the code VECTRA at their checkout page. So to kick this off, console wars. Now, before we actually discuss, reasoning behind it and all that, what I want to know is, I think I know how Steve's been, but I'd be interested to kind of hear your history of this, Andy. Have you been like mostly loyal to one company or one particular brand when it comes to video games? Is it like, you've never bought like an Xbox, you've always liked PlayStation? Like basically what I'm saying is, have you been a massive fanboy before for a particular system or company? And has that changed over the years?
I wouldn't say I was a massive fanboy. If I just go through my console collection from back in the day, Commodore, NES, Sega Mega Drive, PS2, there's a bit of a gap there, PS3, PS4. So I guess they're sort of stuck with Sony in sort of the later generations. But I mean, I feel like that was because PS2, the Xbox hadn't even come out then. It was like I think it was a year before the Xbox came out. So I got that, and then I just sort of stuck with Sony because I stuck with what I knew really.
So it wasn't a case of like you kind of looked at Microsoft and were like, it's Xbox, PlayStation's always better. It's just that you got the last system. That's why you wanted to get the next. So you kind of had.
Yeah, I think it was kind of the exclusives as well. Like back in the day, Metal Gear Solid was a Sony exclusive, so I actually liked that series. That's why I sort of stuck with Sony, because they didn't have that on Xbox for a while. So I think that was part of the reason as well. And
Steve, I think from what I know about you, and I may be wrong, there may be at some point, some timeline when you got a different console, maybe a Nintendo system or something else. But you're mostly like all about Sony, aren't you? Like in terms of PlayStation, has that always been the case?
Yeah, I mean, I've had all the consoles that Andy's had, but apart from I had the PS1, I've had Nintendo Game Boys and things like that. But the majority of my time, I've always been a PlayStation, user or fanboy, whatever you want to call it. I've never really kind of gone over to Microsoft or Xbox or anything. I've never really been drawn to that area. All my friends always had PlayStations, and why would you go and buy another system if your friends aren't playing that system? It would just be, it'd be really silly to do. So I've always been a Sony fanboy, for instance. And over the years, it just got more and more where I became more fanboyish.
Was that because of your friends, or was that because, I don't know, you enjoyed playing those systems? Like, what kind of created that loyalty for you?
The loyalty for me was, well, all my friends were playing. I wouldn't say really a loyalty back then. I mean, for me, it's just because my friends were playing it, and, I felt that I had to buy, if one of my PlayStations broke, I felt that I was drawn to buy another one, So I suppose you could say I was loyal to the brand because you wouldn't go out there and buy another one. But I wanted to be where my friends were, and that was on PlayStation, not PlayStation 1, PS3 and, and stuff like that. I know there was an internet connection on PS2, but I never really, kind of entered into that.
I think Andy's the only one who actually made use of PlayStation 2's online. Did you use it, didn't you, Andy?
God, I did, but when we say online, it was a really sort of, you had to buy a separate adapter which plugged into the back of it, and that cost you an extra like 30 quid or something like that. And then it isn't like these days on the PlayStation Store where you could go across buy stuff in the store and download it. It was literally, you had a game that was network compatible. You already had that in. You plugged an Ethernet cable in. You logged on the game to the network, and then you played that game. And if you wanted to change games, then you had to exit that, put in a new disc, and start all over again. So yeah, it's completely different to what the PlayStation Network is now.
I mean, it's a bit of an interesting kind of history for me in terms of I never, well, when I first system I ever got, I think I remember telling you, both of you, before, that I didn't have a place. I remember telling Andy in like one of the Game Glance videos, I think, actually. I was saying about I never owned a PlayStation 1. I only owned a PlayStation 2. That was the first thing I got. I was like 7 years old at the time. And my brother had the PlayStation 1, and so before that I was playing on that, and that's what made me want to get the next one. I was like, oh, this is not the PlayStation 1, this is the PlayStation 2. It must be, it looks better. And back then you're like, oh, the graphics are so realistic, but you look now and it looks ridiculous.
It's garbage.
But I was very much in kind of Steve's boat. I was a Sony, kind of a little bit of a Sony fanboy, but without even realizing it. Like, I wasn't like buying these because it was this company. I was just like, well, I had this PlayStation, or my brother had this PlayStation. I want to get it. And that's kind of where it went. But I had the PlayStation 3 when it came to that. I got that because my friends had it and I wanted to play with them. And I didn't know many people who had an Xbox 360. I never even knew the Xbox existed back then. I just knew about the PlayStation 2 and PlayStation 1. And then some of my friends started getting the Xbox 360. I decided to get it because half of them were playing one and half of them were playing the other. And I just kind of made the transition over to Xbox, really, and Microsoft. And I had the 360. I enjoyed it more. I enjoyed using that console. So then I never really went on a PlayStation because I just found out the features and stuff more suited to me, and the way I wanted to play and all that. So then I got and now I have the Xbox One. So I've kind of made the switch from buying Sony consoles to buying Microsoft consoles. And I do kind of feel there is a bit of loyalty for me as well. But it's just kind of changed halfway through. This kind of brings me on to my next point. So we've had some point where we've bought like a string of consoles or whatever, like, Andy, you bought like the PlayStation 4 or PlayStation 3 because you had owned previous versions of those consoles.
Yeah, I mean, I think as well, the PlayStation 3 offered a Blu-ray player, whereas the Xbox 360 didn't. So I think that was another reason why I went for that as well, actually, just thinking about it.
And then we've got Steve as well. He's been very much like PlayStation all the way.
I've had a lot of with PlayStation 3 because they got a Blu-ray player and we got a HD TV downstairs, so we were able to buy, Blu-ray disc and watch it in Blu-ray. And going from a DVD to a Blu-ray is, a massive jump, and that's one of the reasons why Xbox 360 they didn't have Blu-ray enabled. That wasn't just the other reason.
They had HD DVD, but everyone knows that sort of petered out, and Blu-ray won the war.
If you look at Blu-ray and HD, just standard HD DVD, whatever, the massive jump is just incredible.
Now, going on to this thing about console wars, for those few who might not know what that definition is, they might think there's some kind of battle going on outside in the streets where, there's loads of gamers fighting each other in the streets like, oh, Xbox is better. No, that's not what it is. But it's more just like the case. That's a really good scenario, actually.
I just imagine South Park, the South Park Console Wars episode.
But it's basically where, it's like my console's better than your console's garbage. And then it's like, having this like kind of rivalry type thing. And you see it on like YouTube comments. You see it on all over the internet. And even, I remember in my experience of just talking to people face to face, you get in a bit of a debate about which is better. And I guess the thing is that I want to kind of open it up to all three of us.
I want to go first when you do this.
Okay, in your opinion, why do you think they exist? These arguments between what's better and what's not, and why do you think people feel the need to defend their console?
Okay, I'm going to go first on this one, but I'm going to change it up a little bit. Like, when...
You're just going to take my question and change it to something else. That's what he's going to...
No, so when PS3 and Xbox 360 were out, I could kind of see the console war being there. PS4 and Xbox One, people argue over these two consoles. Now, I've got mates that own both consoles. And to be honest with you, I really don't see why there's so much of a fanboy. Like, if you go and buy this console, I'm never going to talk to you again. These two consoles are very, very similar. They've got the same kind of characteristics as one console to the other. I don't see why people fanboy over, and I'm contradicting myself now over my previous statement, but I don't see why people are so. Like this console's better than the PS4, the Xbox One's better than the that, because they are very similar.
Andy, do you have a explanation to that or a view on that?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to agree with Steve there. Like at the moment they are very similar, whereas back in the day, I think that there were sort of pros and cons to both of them. Like we just said, the PS3 had the Blu-ray DVD player, whereas the Xbox 360 eventually got the HD DVD, and so there was sort of a reason to go down either platform. Whereas these days, there's not really as much of a need for them. But I think it's just people just like, hey, yeah, my console can do 60 frames per second and yours can't, and I think it is just a bragging thing, really.
I think it might be a bragging thing, but I kind of looked into this a little bit and. I watched a couple of videos, people talking about console wars and just comparing consoles and stuff like that, and what I could take from it, and also from just looking at comments on YouTube. They're the most interesting ones because I'll get onto that a little bit in terms of negative stuff. That's one of the things I want to cover. But I feel and I feel that this is because I feel like you could have the PS4 and the Xbox One. Could have the same internal, the same architecture in the system, the same parts, everything, look different, have a different name, different branding, and cost the same. And I think you could still have a console war argument type thing. And the reason I think that is because people can only buy one. Usually can only afford to buy one or the other. They can't afford to buy both. And so when you make a purchase, when you make a decision in a more general term, it's hard to admit that you made the wrong decision a lot of the time. And if you've invested money upon this, it's kind of like you don't want to admit, I wasted my money here or whatever, or I could have spent my money more wisely. So people want to defend their purchase and justify that they made the right decision. So even if they were exactly the same, and they are very similar, the PS4 and the Xbox One, there's different, obviously different with looks, slightly different hardware aspects, different software, different games, but they act in this very similar way. Most of the games are cross-platform, and you could have a very similar experience, I think.
True. I just want to draw one thing up here. They look different. Well, they're both black boxes
that is
with
true.
Shiny bits. They're virtually the same in that respect. But
true.
Go on.
Sorry. True. I understand that from what both of you are saying, but if you took the brand name away, PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, and you just branded it a different name, there would be no wars because people would...
I still think there would. No, because it's like...
No, you can't disagree with it. It's right, because it is right.
No,
I can't disagree with it.
Because you took the name away...
Brand A and brand B, it doesn't matter which one there are. People will always go for brand A, people will always go for brand B, and they will always have an argument about which
it's not. Look.
You brought a brand new console out, a brand new.
But you're missing the point, Steve. It's not to do with the reason these arguments happen. Isn't because it's a PlayStation or it's an Xbox. It's because they've had a decision between buying brand A, brand B, like Andy said, and they've chose A over B or B over A. It doesn't matter what the name is, whatever. It's that if you've decided to make a decision getting that thing, then you're going to try in every power to convince not only yourself, but others that this thing that you spent loads of money on is better than this other thing that you could spend a similar amount of money on.
How would you know what is better if it was if it was rebranded. If it was,
it's not about the console wars aren't about knowing what's better. It's about defending your system.
I understand that, but what I'm trying to get at is going back to, and I kind of agree with. What you got to understand is that the PS4 and the Xbox One, they are very similar machines now. If you were talking about Xbox 360 and PS3, I could understand a fanboy war, but they're so similar, it's unreal. Like,
yeah, but it's not because even though they're similar, it doesn't make a difference. It's that if you've spent money on one thing instead of another, then you're going to have to. People don't want to admit they made a bad decision. They want to justify they made the right decision. And
well, take your receipt back and get a refund.
Yeah, I know, but they want to not admit that they made a mistake in the first place, saying, oh, this one's better and I messed up. It's a case of saying, look, I invested this money and it was a good investment. It's like when you invest in a business or you invest in, whenever you make an investment, you want to try and convince others that you're not an idiot. You made a good purchase, and you should have got this over that. It's not to do with the difference. It's not about knowing what's better.
And you want to convince other people to buy the product you've just bought because you don't want to be seen as you're a complete and a twat.
Yeah,
for instance.
But I think if we move on from its existence and the reasoning behind it, what do you think some of the negative things are that come from console wars? So these people have arguments on the internet. They have arguments in real life. They have arguments all over the place. And what do you think the negative outcomes are of that? How do what's bad about that?
Look at PC and console. I know there's only one. You got PC that stands alone, and you've got console.
I do want to say actually, let's throw PC into the mix as well. So just PC, console. Why is there this whole thing? PC the master race. My PS4 is better than your Xbox One.
I want to jump in on this one. I never used to be a PC player. I would be like, sure, who play PC? What the hell? Like, I see PC games. Why do I go and buy them? I never knew about Steam. I never knew anything about this. I was just a hardcore PS3 fanboy. If anyone spoke to me about Xbox 360, it'd be like, get out of my house, whatever, And then I saw Steam, and I was like, you know what? This is actually much better than console.
Okay, but harkening back to it not being better or worse, it kind of going back to the original question.
There's no war with PC.
What are the negative outcomes of these arguments about consoles and machines and which is better?
But it makes people. Go on, Andy.
I was going to say people come up with stupid arguments. I think that is one of the negative things. There are people that they're just like, man, mine's better than yours, and there isn't any real reasons behind their arguments. Like, I could quite happily say, oh, my PlayStation's better than your Xbox One because, I don't know, because it's got 2 USB ports or something.
Yeah.
There are some stupid people out there that just almost ruin it, and I feel like the people aren't constructive in some of their opinions about the consoles.
I think the worst place has to be, and I mentioned it earlier, but YouTube comments. Because if you ever look at a video of something to do with the biggest pet peeve for me about like all this console war stuff is it just gets so annoying and tiresome to hear. Like, you could be watching a video about like Microsoft have made an announcement about the Xbox One, or it could be E3, for example, and like you're watching it on Twitch or something, and you've got the chat, and the chat's the worst thing to look at E3, because you have the press conference, and it doesn't matter, like, what it is. Like, Xbox will be doing their press conference, and the PlayStation people, like, fanboys, would be like, oh, this sucks, it's terrible, not even giving it, like, a rational thought, like, whatever it is. And it's just so annoying. Like, I want to see what things people have that are worth saying, important things, like, if someone said, oh, that could have been better if they added this, and I go, that's a good comment, because that's constructive, like you said.
Yeah, like, and it's the lack of constructivism, if that's an actual word in the comments.
It is now.
It's shit.
Yeah.
And it's like, why? Back that up, and I might agree with you there.
And that's what annoys me about people that jump on the bandwagon, like, oh, this guy said it's shit, so it must be shit. Like, why? Like, no wonder people don't want to go out and buy a console, for example, if they're a PC player. because they're so scared to. Like, I haven't bought a PS3, and the reason why I haven't bought a PS3 or a Xbox One, because I'm so confused which console I should go out and buy.
Yeah, exactly. You're so confused. You've already bought a PS3, and it's the PS4 that's out now.
Yeah, I know.
The thing is, though, as I also find quite annoying, is not so much now, but when I was younger, and this is another point that I want to bring up later on. It's just to do with age. When I was a lot younger, and I was with my friends, they'd be like, "Oh, why you decided to play on your Xbox? Why are you not playing on your PlayStation anymore?" Because I had half of friends that played on this, half of friends that played on that, and it was like, "Well, the Xbox has got this. Oh, that's rubbish," And it's like, I just want to talk to you about video games. Like, what games you've been playing. I don't want to talk about if my system's better than yours. I want to talk about what good games have you been playing on yours. Like, and it's just kind of very difficult to have that, because if you're not talking about the same console, it's like that always is like a wall. It's like, no, let's talk about the games. Let's not talk about the systems. But I also think, I don't know if you've seen this before, but in terms of these arguments, sometimes they can get a bit out of control. That's a bit of an understatement, I think. But sometimes it's like personal things get brought up, like, oh, well, like really hurtful things are said just because I guess over on the internet, like they say, the joke is you're not allowed to have an opinion on the internet. But if you say the PlayStation's better than the Xbox, then sometimes people will say some really hurtful things to you, and they might say some really horrible things. And it's like, why are you saying that? They're just saying this electronic system, they prefer it over this one. Does it really mean you have to talk about their personal life or what they look like or anything like that? Just taking unnecessary stabs.
I can understand that person's point for being that horrible, not going to that extent where they would be so mean to say something about personally. But I remember I had a friend that was on PlayStation 3, and he moved over to Xbox 360 because his mates went over there. And I remember like 6 of us ganged up on him, and we knew him in real life, and he felt so like scared. And then when I look back at it, I thought, why?
It's so pathetic.
Why did I do that? Why did I do that for? Then
it's just a plastic box at the end of the day, and it's like, this is what all the commotion's about.
Yeah, you get so pulled into it, you don't realise what you're doing and what you're saying. It's like you've been possessed. And then you look back at it, you think, why did I do that for? We're best friends now. Like, we get on really well now. Like, he doesn't even play console anymore, and I hardly play it anyway. But I just think, why did I even get drawn into that so far?
Now, on an opposite contrast of the negatives, what good do you think can come out of it? Because I do have a good few points. I have more negatives than positives. I've realised, but some of the positives I have do make sense, and I guess have helped in some way. But what good do you think? Do you see any good coming out of like more the competitive nature of like this is the loyalty of the powerful loyalty that you have. If Sony have all these loyal fans, having that is very valuable. And vice versa. So, what good can you see that comes out of it?
I actually think that if we look at how Microsoft originally sort of marketed the Xbox One as like, oh my god, you can watch sports and all of this on it, and you need to have the what's it called, the Kinect on it, and people obviously fed back on that. Sony saw that, went on a different angle. And they were like, no, look, this is about games, partly possibly because Microsoft went in a different way. And then they've sort of learned from that, and now we've got the sort of Kinectless Xbox One, because people didn't necessarily want that, and it's slightly cheaper. So there is that sort of competitive edge that the two companies can have on each other, and it's making the prices a bit more competitive. And I feel like that's a positive thing that comes out of these things. Console war.
Yeah,
sure
I mean,
there are others as well.
That was one of my points that I was thinking, like the massive U-turn that Microsoft made, like, and it kind of gives these companies more of a competitive edge, because if they had no one to compete with, then things wouldn't be as great. And
look at this, you want it. There's nothing else in the market, so that's what you're having.
The other thing is that with this, with a console war comes great loyalty on either side of the fence. So if you've got people who used to be like, oh, I'm a loyal Xbox fanboy, but because of these changes that Microsoft have been making, I'm thinking of going over to PlayStation. If you lose those people, it's very hard to get them back. So that makes them want to try harder.
And I suppose the other one is, if you look at PlayStation Plus and what's Microsoft's equivalent? I can't think of it off the top of my head.
Gold with games. That's what.
Yeah. Because PlayStation Plus was giving out their free games every month, to compete with that, Microsoft has started giving out free games as well. And then Sony has responded by going, hey, maybe we should give out 2 free games every month. And because of that competitiveness, they are making it better value for money for the consumers.
Steve, would you say that can you see these kind of things like the console wars and stuff and loyalty of having fanboys benefiting us gamers?
As long as there's fanboys, there's going to be better deals that come out. We all know that. If for instance, like Microsoft will just sit back on the fence and go, nope, we're not offering any deals. You pay $500 for the console, and then Sony go, well, actually, you can buy this console for $250, and then we're going to give out free games. Where are people going to go? People are always going to go to where they can get the cheapest price. I know that loyalty does matter, but in this day and age with, economic climate, people are always going to go for the better deal, regardless if you're a fanboy. That is why, I kind of see a positive that if Sony does a deal, Microsoft will come back one better, and then vice versa. So they're always competing with each other, always.
Like going back to what you said, Steve, about your friend decided to get an Xbox, and you kind of like made it, felt a bit kind of like scared that you made that decision or whatever. I don't even want to know what happened there. Like,
I just want to 6 of us. There were 6 of us. It wasn't just me. There were 6 of us that did that.
Yeah, but using that to kind of go on to the next point, do you think that as we get older, we care less and less about like arguing about what's better? So having to feel the need to kind of defend our system. Like, does it become less important as we become more mature, as we grow older? Do we care less about it, and does it become less of an issue?
When I was 19, a console war, I used to love getting into a console war. But as I've got older, as long as I can play my games I want to play on that console, it doesn't bother me. As long as they're bringing out something new each year, I couldn't give a damn. As long as there's, something new to the table that I can go, oh, this is a new device. Probably never going to use it, but, it's something new and something fresh. Then yeah. But yeah, as we do get older, we kind of grow out of that console war fanboyish thing, These 2 consoles are great. Which one do I choose? Well, that's down to you.
I do think that me and you, like, I remember, I think when I first met you, we were talking about, like, you were like, oh, have you got I didn't have a PlayStation at the time.
No, you didn't. No.
And you were saying, like, oh, do you want to come and play on PlayStation with me? And I was like, oh, no, I haven't got one. I've got an Xbox. And you were like, why have you got that? Like, and then we had, like, some big argument about, like, which was better. Like, we had our own little mini console, like, war, like, mini argument kind of thing. Like, it wasn't, like, it didn't get out of hand. We didn't, fall out or get angry. It was just, like, it was a bit of a fun argument. But I remember you being very kind of like, oh, everything on Xbox is stupid kind of thing. And now I've noticed you're more accepting of like saying, well, you know what, it's actually a good system. Like, I haven't got one myself, but like you said, they're very similar. It's like, it seems to me that with you that you're, and other people that I've known, they don't, they talk about things differently and they don't kind of have that same sort of tone.
If we were talking about PS3 and Xbox 360, I would hands down always talk about PS3, fanboy PS3 always. But now we're talking about Xbox One and PS4. This is a totally different ballgame because the 2 consoles are so alike. And yeah, like, it's gone out the window. Like, I don't have this fanboyish thing anymore. Like, oh, you gotta buy a PS4, I'm kind of thinking to myself, which console do I buy? Because I'm so confused. What do I buy? And I know I've owned a PS3, but which one do I get now? Which one's the better one?
I mean, I think I'm at the stage in my life where it's like, okay, I've got to weigh up the advantages and disadvantages of both. But I have to say, I've got a PS4, like everyone probably knows, and Matt, you've got an Xbox One, and I've played on both of them. I have to say, out of both of the controllers, I prefer the way that the PS4 one feels. It just feels nicer in my hands, and it I just feel that one's more for me. However, I feel like the Xbox One's got a nicer interface than the PS4. I'm not particularly that keen on it. It's very clunky, and there's a lot of icons just all over the place. So both of them have their sort of pros and cons. When we sort of don't even talk about the games, and the games, there's not really even that many exclusives anymore.
Well, it's like what we talked about. It wasn't last week; it was the week before that, on episode 17, I believe. We were talking about like the PS4 and Xbox One, but we weren't comparing the two. And if you go back and watch that video, don't assume that me and Andy are like, no, this is one's better, that one's better. It was more that we were saying like, should you get either one of these at all? And we didn't really get into an argument about like, oh no, Andy, all of the PlayStation stuff's stupid, and you didn't say, oh, Xbox, it's wasted money. Like, that never happened. But I don't know, maybe given like a few years back, I don't know, maybe if I was like 15-year-old Matt, would have been, if we got 15-year-old Matt, we took a time machine, we brought him to join this discussion, I think he would just kind of like anything that you said about PlayStation, he would have been like, yeah, that's not good.
Nope.
Like, would have been very one-sided, wouldn't have listened at all, been very kind of like ignorant, I guess.
About everything.
I want to say one thing though. Look, I always used to slag off the Xbox 360 controller because I used to hate using it. I just didn't get on with it, and I've been using it for the past 6 weeks or so. And I went back to PS3 the other day, just to play one of my favourite games.
Oh, it feels weird, doesn't it?
And I couldn't get used to it. I was like, I can't play this. So I was thinking, could I plug the Xbox 360 controller into the PS3?
I tell you what it's like. Because they're so different, those controllers.
They're not that different.
Well, but
they
in
are.
size, it's the biggest thing. So when you're using it all the time, and you're like this, right? So like, imagine I've got this controller in my hand. I know you're both probably looking for controllers right now.
Yep.
So while they look for that, I'm going to tell you guys, the way that you hold a controller for the Xbox 360, it's very much like this, and you got your hand. When you go back to the PlayStation, it feels like this. It feels like I can't grip it with my massive hands. Like, it feels like your hands have grown and you've become a giant. And it's like, I can't. I think but see, that's the thing. That's the PlayStation 4 one, and that is a lot bigger than the.
Yeah,
I have noticed though. I know this is a bit beside the point, but the controllers are they feel kind of similar. There was a few people last year that were like, oh no, they're not similar at all. I had like a bit of a Twitter debate, and these people, I can't remember, but someone was like, oh no, they're completely different. What are you talking about? But when I tried them out, it was like they felt the triggers had a very similar feeling. They weren't shaped the same way, but they give a little bit. They're not like they go straight down like the 360. They don't fling back up like the PlayStation 3. They're more similar than they've ever been. Not just the consoles, but the controllers themselves as well, I think.
I mean, not trying to get into too much of a debate about controllers. I found that the Xbox One controller was more abrasive on my thumbs because of the sort of patterning on the thumbsticks, and after a while, it just makes dents in my thumbs.
The thing
I feel.
I mean, even owning it, I have some things that I prefer and I prefer. The thing that sold me the most about the controller was like the triggers, like the impulse triggers they have, where they have like little motors in them. Because they're quite good for driving and shooting and stuff, because you have a little bit of a vibration kind of thing. Like as you kind of, so if you accelerate, you can kind of tell by the feeling as well that you. So, but the analog sticks could be a bit better. But this is what I mean. Like we're having like. A very mature kind of discussion about this is what that. But most of these console wars are very like, that's all stupid. No, it's not. You're stupid, and I hate you. No, I hate you, and you're dumb, and your console's
your family
and your console's dumb, and your mum's dumb for agreeing or buying you that, and you're all stupid. Like that's the kind of ridiculous stuff that goes on. But I think this has already been covered, really, but do you think that the quality of these systems, how do you think it would affect the quality of these systems if there was no kind of heated debates, there was no console wars, there was no any of that?
Everything would be so boring.
Hmm.
Everything would be boring if there was no console war. If there was nothing to kind of, like, make a war of, for example. Everything would just be so bland.
It is a bit funny to think of it as a war as well. Like, it's a bit over dramatic, but
it's more of the great console disagreement.
It doesn't sound as dramatic though, does it? Like the great console disagreement. Like, doesn't...
The great console disagreement of 2004. I mean, I feel it wouldn't necessarily be boring. I think it like we said before, I think it has got its positives, and that is the sort of competitive nature between the two companies. Or we are forgetting Nintendo as well, which is sort of just on the sidelines cheering.
I mean,
for itself, but
I think that they wouldn't try as hard because the fans wouldn't be. Because in order to not have arguments, that means that the fans of either system would have to have no loyalty or less loyalty. So, if they think that we can easily win people over, they won't try as hard to outdo each other.
I don't think they'd bring out so many. The console would have brought out today because it would have cost way too much money. If whatever. But
overall, do you think? Let's just have like the overall general question. Final question. Do you think that console wars should exist? Yes or no? And your overall summary of why that is.
Yes, but in my opinion, they shouldn't be so full on where you take it so personally you have to, degrade their family, for example. But I do think console wars are a good thing, but as long as you don't degrade family, and it gets personal.
Yeah, I think I'm going to agree with Steve here. They are a good thing, but in this same sort of positive respects, as in it encourages the companies to bounce off each other and make better deals for the consumer. There isn't a monopoly on the whole market, and I feel that that's the good side of them. And if we can get rid of all the petty arguments, then the console wars in inverted commas are definitely a good thing, and they should continue to exist.
Yeah, my thoughts exactly about that point about petty arguments. I'm all for console, not all for, but like I am fine with console wars, and I'm fine with people saying my console's better, whatever. But this is mainly
constructively.
This is mainly, and this is, if any of my friends happen to come across this video and you watch this, I want to say to you, just tone it down a little, mate. Like, just don't. Can we have a discussion about what games and the video games rather than which console is better, and just everyone overall. If we could just tone it down a little bit and not be so irrational. Remember, don't make an argument about a system turn into an argument about like somebody's life and all that other stuff, and like don't insult them. Maybe insult the machine, that's fine, but don't insult the person who you're arguing with.
Do you know what I heard PS4 say about you?
Oh, what's
PS4
that?
said you've got a tiny penis.
Oh. Well, guess what?
that type of thing.
Xbox One said, yeah. I can think of anything. But yeah, I think we all think they should exist, but
in a constructive way.
Yeah, in a constructive way. If it helps the companies be more competitive, then that benefits the gamer, and that's a good thing. Just don't be so extreme that it can be, and just tone it down quite a lot. Before we kind of sign out on this episode, I do want to mention that there won't be an episode next week, because we'll be kind of getting set up and getting ready for EGX London, which, if you don't know, is basically a gaming expo in London that it's like the main one. There's one in Birmingham as well earlier in the year, but you can try out the video games that have recently come out or will be coming out next year and all that kind of stuff. And we're going to be there. And we will be doing a special EGX episode of the Spawn Point for episode number 20. And that will be on the 1st of October. You'll be able to check that out. But for next week, there won't be anything. And that is the same with the news as well, to some extent. Andy will be doing this week's news. But after that, we'll be taking a break for a week or two, because we plan to have lots of interviews, overviews of the event, lots of stuff related to EGX. And I guess, guys, are you looking forward to it? It's only, 10 days away?
10 days, yeah.
It is.
10 days.
By the time you watch this, it's going to be 7? Yeah, 10 days. 8 days.
It'll be roughly a week, almost.
It'll be just over a week. Yeah, it's going to be good fun. I think we've got some good interviews lined up. Well, hopefully we've got some good interviews lined up. Looking at them.
I mean, we have got stuff set up, and we have things that have been organised, and hopefully they follow through and we do them.
But we don't follow through while we're doing them, because that would be bad.
Oh yeah, that would be bad.
God!
But yeah, and we're hoping to kind of showcase quite a few indie games as well. So, it should be good. And also let us know what you think in the comment section about all this console war fiasco and stuff, and share your thoughts as well. And we'll respond back to you in the comments. Steve might ignore you because he's a Sony fanboy. No, it doesn't make any sense. I know.
I'm on the fence, so I'll ignore everyone.
But that summarises episode 19 of the Spawn Point podcast. We will see you on October the 1st for an EGX special.
2014.
Until then, goodbye.